Hello and welcome to the brand new American Reformation podcast. We long to see the wider American Christian church fall more in love with Jesus by learning from the practices of the early church and other eras of discipleship multiplication. We want to hear from you. Make sure you comment and leave a review wherever you're watching or listening to tell us what God is doing in your life or how you feel about today's conversation. Lord, have your way in us. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the American Reformation Podcast. Tim Allman here. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I don't know if you're listening to this in November and some of you are getting grumpy. I'm getting super stoked. Why? Because 100-degree temperatures are coming down, and I think it's going to be 80 degrees today, and I love being a kid walking and running outside, and I pray that you're ready to lean in today. Hopefully you got your water. Hopefully you're locked in, water before coffee. You've moved your body, and maybe you're even taking this in as you're moving your body that God has given to you as you lean into a leadership conversation today with two people who actually interviewed me first. This was a unique invitation that I received a number of months ago to learn with Dan Heyn and Rachael Larson, who are partners in Siemens, which is an amazingly large company. You're going to hear them share a little bit of their story, but they reached out to me just wanting to learn from different leaders in various sectors. And what are a lot of those kind of commonalities that we have from the church space out into the marketplace? So Rachael Larson has a 14-year career with Siemens, starting a building automation sales and then moving into branch management. I love this part of your story, Rachael. You focus on smart building, leveraging technology to automate buildings to be more autonomous and efficient. We're talking heating and cooling controls. She's a graduate of Iowa State University and mechanical engineering. You guys are just way smarter than I am. You later obtained your MBA, and she's been in leadership management, people development for a long time. Has a husband and a couple young sons. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us, Rachael. And Dan has dedicated his 35-year career to developing software that helps companies design complex products like airplanes, cars, space vehicles. That's cool, man. Mobile devices, medical devices, windmills, and many more. He began his career as a software engineer and then moved into various leadership roles. He's been a part of Siemens now, which strives to provide the number one provider in integrated engineering and manufacturing software products. Extraordinary. This company is huge. He's also the wife of 36 years to Lisa and 4 married kids, and they are members from across the country with us here on our shared mission at Christ Greenfield. So thank you so much, Dan and Rachael, for hanging out. First question, we're going to lean into a lot of leadership principles, how to develop healthy teams today. But the first standard question, Dan, that I like to start with, how are you praying for Reformation in the American Christian church today, man? Thanks so much for hanging with me, Dan and Rachael.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I mean, I have to start firstly with humility and repentance in my prayer for the church. I mean, I've been a lifelong Christian, and I just have to say that I've not been bold enough throughout the years and even now, sharing the joy of Jesus with everyone. And there's so many people that just haven't heard it these days. And so my prayer is that I and every other Christian in America, just can't shut up about Jesus. I have this person that I think about when I say this. It's my Uncle Tom. He was like a rebel when he was younger, then finally, but in his 30s, he became sober. And after that, anytime you see him, he just couldn't shut up about Jesus. He had this sort of joy and sparkle in his eye, and it was contagious. And I feel like, this kind of spreading, talking about this joy, talking about this hope, it changes hearts. And when you change hearts, they change other hearts. So that's my prayer for the Christian church in America.
Oh, I love that, Dan, so much. Rachael, we just are talking a little bit of our faith journey. Anything to add to that? How are you praying for Reformation, from your home out into the community as connected to your local church?
Yeah, well, I think Dan said it beautifully, but I think also just building that sense of community. One of my favorite outreach things that we do at my church is a community garden. And We place a lot of our effort into just feeding the community and building that connection over a meal. And that's my prayer, is that community continues to build.
Well, that was Jesus' prayer. You may not know. They would know that we're followers of his by the way that we love one another. And one of the primary markers, actually, of the early church, why it grew so rapidly, is hospitality, care around meals. We got to go make old school, new school, taking times in our homes to have deep Jesus conversations. How's that go for you in the Larson household, Rachel, right now, in terms of because our lives are so busy, hectic. I don't even like that word, busy, right? They're full. Hopefully Jesus full, with Jesus at the center. But just like sitting down with your husband and your two sons to have a meal, how's that going for you guys these days? Because for us, it can be hit and miss, man.
Yeah, it is definitely hit and miss, but we're making a big effort to plan the week in advance so that we're not getting stuck going to McDonald's every day, and we can sit down, whether it's, something that's been prepared in advance or, maybe it is something faster, but we do try to sit down as a family.
Yeah. That's really, really good. Dan, you've been connected to Christ Greenfield, United Leadership Collective. I know you've listened to these podcasts for a while now. You walked through an incredibly, it was hard. I was praying for you. So many people were praying for you. Just an awful illness connected to COVID. And would you tell that story, brother?
Sure. Yeah. Let me kind of step back through the story, and then I'll maybe tell you a little bit what I learned about it. So take yourself back to July 31st, 2021. That's about 15 months into the pandemic. And at that point, each state and everybody was kind of in various forms of lockdown or not lockdown or so on. Me personally, I was sick of it. I was over COVID. I was invincible. I figured if I ever got it, I would just, it would be good because I'd actually kind of grow an immunity to it, So I spent the summer up in Michigan. I'm in North Carolina, up in Michigan, family visits, family wedding, volleyball tournament, and so on. And then, I just assumed I was invincible, and then God showed me I wasn't. So I was driving back to Michigan. I got sicker and sicker on the way back, and the next few days, within a few days, I was in the hospital. I spent the next 3 miserable, boring weeks in the hospital, barely breathing. It was like the longest days I've ever spent in my life. Then my left lung started collapsing, and after the third collapse, I was told I needed to go on a ventilator. And if people probably had heard about ventilators back then during COVID, that was sort of your last line of defense. And but they told me I probably wouldn't survive it. It was really low probability of survival at that time. So my kids, I have 4 kids. They traveled into town. I prayed with and for them. We said our goodbyes. Then I went under, and I didn't wake up from the process. And so they put the tubes in and everything, but I was unconscious. So, one issue after another happened while I was unconscious. I got sepsis, pneumonia, various other things, each one almost killing me. Day and night, my wife and kids stayed on top of the situation. Often Lisa, my wife, had to battle with doctors and nurses who wanted to give up, saying that, he's just not going to survive this. And if he does come out of it, he's not going to be right in the head. And it would be the humane thing to do, they were telling her. So Lisa, the kids, hundreds of prayer warriors, and including, Christ Greenfield and many other churches were praying that whole time. And so Lisa had in her mind that, she's going to give it at least 30 days. And that 30 days came and went. But thankfully, not too much after that 30 days, I started waking up. And then she had me airlifted from North Carolina to Michigan. There was a recovery facility up there. At the time, I was dry bones. I'm like a skeleton. I'm on a feeding tube. kidney dialysis, breathing device, large bed sores. I didn't even have the strength to hold a pen or roll over. I was that weak. I had no muscles left. When I got there, the doctors said, this guy has a very little chance of making it. And if he does make it, he's going to be on kidney dialysis his whole life. He'll probably be in a wheelchair his whole life. And then all of a sudden, God started bringing me back to life, just slowly but surely, a little bit at a time. Things started working again. About 6 weeks later, after a lot of difficult rehab, I was at home. We had an apartment up in Michigan. And about 2 months after that, I was able to come back to North Carolina and get back to work. And fast forward 2 years now, which Facebook keeps reminding me that's 2 years. It keeps telling me what was going on 2 years ago. I'm grateful to say that I've aged a bit, but everything's working, and I even got to play volleyball this summer. So, praise God. It's a lot of people say it's a miracle. So, and I have to agree. And
I definitely agree.
So this is a crazy experience, and I can tell you a few things I learned from it, but I'll let you ask if you have questions.
I'd love
on
to
the
hear
experience.
that. Top 2 or 3 things you learned through, the journey.
It's one of those things is like when I first came out of it, people would say, well, has it changed your perspective on life and all that kind of stuff? And I found that, it wasn't like an instant thing. It's like you have to keep kind of thinking through, what did you learn about this thing? And it's almost like a conscious decision. What am I going to learn from this situation? Just like any bad situation in your life, you have to consciously decide you're going to learn from it. You're going to, what can I take away from this situation? And so for me, it's been a learning process, even over the last couple of years, of what did I learn, from the situation? And I'll tell you a few things I did. First of all, and this is something I didn't have to think about long, this happened like right away, that God's people are faithful friends. I mean, I was so humbled when I woke up to find out who had all been praying for me all this time. I mean, I was oblivious. I was, everybody else was going through misery, especially my family. And there's just the people praying for me, people offering financial support, emotional support, and so on. I just wept when I just learned about it all. It was just crazy. I later learned that many of their stories, God used them, the situation, to build their faith and to build the faith of others. I go to like family events or other kind of church events and stuff, and people will bring their little kids up to me and say, oh, this is Miracle, the Miracle Man, that we were praying for. And they're all excited, that they got to meet this person they prayed for, and that came out of it. I'm just thankful I came out of it for them. But, a lot of people grew their faith through that. So that was one learning. Another one was, I'm not Dan the man who's invincible anymore. I learned humility. I learned a stronger empathy for people who are sick. I never had been sick like that before, ever. I was always, healthy, never in the hospital and so on. And I just when people were sick, I just felt like they were being weak. Right now I get it. It's not that they're weak. It's that something bad has happened to them. Anybody can have something bad happen to them. And now I can feel it when somebody's sick, and I'm able to, better help them, be of help. And then I'll say, rehab is hard. So God heals you, but you have to do the work. Anytime I would be lazy about it, progress wouldn't be made as much, but you got to put in the work. And you got to have a goal and a positive attitude and a patient attitude towards it. I was accepting that, okay, maybe I will be in a wheelchair. Maybe I will be on, I'll make the most of my situation, but I was accepting it, but I wasn't content with that. I wanted to push for something more, right? And you have to have something like that in your life to get you to the next level. And then finally, my last point would be like I'm more grateful now. I think like of every day as a gift. I wake up each day and I make a conscious effort to just thank God for another day. This is another day, and help me to use my abilities and to bring joy to other people's life, during that day. There's a great quote I heard recently from a Willie Nelson song, the great Willie Nelson, right? It says, "Live every day like it was your last one, and one day you're going to be right." And now I realize that, that could be any day, and it could have been 2 years ago for me. And so each day is a bonus, now. So try to make the best of it. So those are a few things I learned. I'm still learning, and I'll continuously try to keep learning from it.
You're the man, bro. Praise Jesus for how he worked in your life. You are a walking miracle, and I think you give us the eyes to see that we're all kind of walking miracles. Every day, I love that last point. Every day is a beautiful gift from God, and are we going to steward it well? There's grace that is underlying this entire thing. I don't think often enough we realize how good God is in just giving us this day, this life, this ability to interact and be in community and to experience love and care from our family to our friends to our wider circle of support. Man, it's just amazing. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast, is I just love hearing stories of God at work in the world and get ourselves, because the world leads us to do what? Because of sin, turn in on ourselves. It's all about me. It's all about me. Either woe is me or how great am I, right? And that's not the way of Jesus. It's a proper sense of self, this deep humility, recognizing that everything is a gift. And out of that proper sense of self, then courage to lean into the respective ways that I have been gifted by God and the people that I get to, the team that I get to be on this day, from my home into the workplace. So thank you for modeling that story for us. And shout out to Lisa and your extended family. How amazing was it to have your wife right alongside you that entire time? I know her. You really married up, bro, for sure.
Yeah,
so
sure.
She took care of you in a powerful way.
Yeah, she totally did. She had the hardest job. I was laying there sleeping. She was fighting that whole time, and it was a grueling, hard job. So yeah.
Oh man, so good. So let's pivot. That's an amazing story. Let's talk leadership. You got more life to live, Dan, more people to bless, more people to inspire. So let's get after it. Kick it over to you, Rachel. Tell us about your leadership study. Why did you choose to study leadership from various sectors of society?
Well, leadership just inherently has always interested me, and especially as I've grown within Siemens and seen some very, very good leaders, some that had areas for improvement. But Dan and I got the opportunity to actually be part of a Siemens Advanced Leadership program over the last year. And, my leadership experience has been kind of leadership by fire. I started in a management role a month before COVID hit. So it was a very, very challenging time for the most experienced of leaders. For me, it was doubly so. And I think what I learned was the people aspect is far more important than any financials. I would even say maybe more so than base strategy, because without the people connection, there is no leadership and there's nothing moving the business forward. So leaning into that and trying to learn more, not only about leadership, but also how we lead in today's world is extremely interesting to me. And I also want to note, as part of this, what we call learning expedition, not only did we interview you, but we actually interviewed a former NBA, current college basketball coach, as well as a corporal from the British Navy. So it was very interesting to hear those themes that were the same, and then also the differences.
Oh, well, I can't wait to get into that. But yeah, Dan, anything else about your learning experience? Thank you, Rachel.
No, I mean, it was definitely fun. The different approaches that you learned from people, and the class we went to afterwards as well. And just seeing how the similarities kind of glared out at you right away, even though the styles were different.
Well, you mentioned it's all about people, Rachel. And I just want to, you bring up COVID today, and maybe COVID, this is leading through COVID, man. Maybe that's somewhat of the theme, because it was very, very challenging. And I'm in a people business, right? I mean, if there's no people, the church doesn't exist. The church isn't about pastors or even like a leadership team. The church is about people of God gathered around word and sacrament and then sent out on mission. So it was very discombobulating. And what were some of your main tactics, Rachael, that you implemented early on to build community in the COVID world in your new role? Because that had to be really trying.
It was, and thankfully we're blessed with technology. So early on, I had weekly calls, and I thought it was very important to get people on camera where we could. And even if we didn't have a lot of content in those meetings, we still jumped on and we connected. It worked better for some than others. And I think that's another piece that I've learned is that you have to get to everybody's level and meet them where they are. If the Teams call being on camera was not the right format for some people, I would also send an email. Sometimes it was text messages, but making sure that we're communicating thoroughly was very important. And then also bringing that empathy in. You know, Dan's story is definitely to an extreme level, and I'm so grateful that he came out of that and I was able to meet him. But everybody had trials during this, and being a leader who also cares about the people and the trials that they're going through was very important.
How did you manage the high D, so driven and also really task-oriented people? Because I think we have that bent, like some folks on our team are way more people, way more kind of the feels and the kind of culture carriers. And then you got others they're like, I don't just want to sit here and look at your face on a call if we're not actually doing the work, right? Doing the work. So how did you balance kind of heavy task and heavy people-oriented folks in your team, Rachael?
Well, I wish I had a silver bullet.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know, it was interesting. So one of the things with our business and my division of Siemens in particular is not everybody could go to remote work. Many of my employees are considered critical employees, and we're still going every day on site to customer sites. And that could have been manufacturing. In a lot of cases, it was healthcare, government buildings, things like that. A lot of them really just did a good job putting on their PPE and just showing up every day. And I think I learned that, you can trust your team and you can let them have that leeway to go get stuff done. But they still needed some check-ins and a little bit more of that empathy than I think they were ready to accept in some cases. So it was a journey.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, for us, there was, obviously our local site was most impacted. Since my team and a lot of our teams were spread out across the world, we were already kind of used to working remotely. And since we're a software development thing, we could pretty much just continue with our same process. And a lot of the people on the team like to just put heads down and work on their code anyway. So they actually, I think, felt it as a blessing that they didn't have to go into the office and wear clothes. And, so that was good. But at the site level, so we had also our Charlotte site, and that was different because we were used to coming in there, seeing everybody. So I started this every other week. Well, first it was every week, then it went to every other week meeting where we just kind of all got together, had video calls and just talked it out. And the people who didn't, obviously they just wanted to get work done and didn't want to talk. They would either just tune in and not listen or not talk, or they would just not come. But that was about how we handled it, and it seemed to keep everything kind of moving along. The tough part's been getting a lot of people to come back to the office after that. They got used to 2 years of sitting at home and working, and not everybody wants to come back. And we're, as leaders, we're trying to evaluate, well, what's really necessary? Do people really need to come back? Do they need to come back just a little bit? And it depends on the role. Rachael has some people that have to be back all the time, and so do I. But there's a lot of people that don't, and so we're trying to figure out that right balance now.
Man, it's just person by, is it more person by department, person or department by department in terms of in person now? Because the nature of work has totally been discombobulated right now. So what percentage, let me ask this question, what percentage of folks at Siemens are in person on a consistent basis and the rest are doing remote work? I'm just curious, because how many employees too does Siemens have? I mean, it's a huge international company.
Yeah. What do we have, Rachel? Is it 400,000 employees, I think.
Huge. So any idea on the percentage of in-person? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Siemens had put out a thing way back, I think at the beginning of COVID or so, that when we came back, everybody was going to be allowed hybrid work, or if they could get away with it for their team. So the expectation is that meant people would at least be able to be at home a couple days a week. But in our department, which is a software development group, I'd say on average in the office, maybe 5% are in the office. And most teams will have at least some element of coming to the office to get together with the team, but that could vary between 2 days a week up to like 1 day a month, and so on. So it's far less than it used to be for our group. I don't know how it is for yours, Rachel.
Yeah, mine's a higher percentage in the office. We certainly didn't get through these past couple of years without some major bumps and lumps. And one of those things was we had a lot of turnover. So a vast majority of my team is newer in the last couple of years. As a result, I think more of them do opt to come into the office just to learn from their peers. But one of the things we did was we implemented some mandatory collaboration days. So everybody has flexibility to work from home 2 to 3 days a week, but we've assigned one day that anybody who is an office person would need to be in so that we can foster that community. We can have the face-to-face meetings, water cooler talk. And I guess kind of circling back to building sense of community over food, we actually have a pizza competition right now where we're ranking all of the local pizza joints. So on Mondays, everybody's in my Des Moines office. On Wednesdays, everybody's in my Omaha office. And it's been very helpful.
That's amazing. I just now feel, I was telling our pastor yesterday, because our congregation's about 85 to 90% of what we were pre-COVID. I looked over at him and I was like, this just feels about like it did before COVID hit. Like it's been that long in terms of the church, and we were very open. It was such a dance, how you open and how sensitive you are to those that are struggling, and then our team as a church, the nature of work has changed. Some of our younger leaders, there's a little bit more of this. They want community, but they also want flexibility. So where we meet, maybe at the coffee shop, etc. But those are kind of in office hours. And then the vast majority of our more seasoned leaders here, they're in the office every single day. There's lots of laughter. If you hear laughter on any of the podcasts outside, they're yucking it up. They're getting after it, but they also deeply enjoy just being with one another. So good. I'd love to dig into your learnings. My doctorate was actually in organizational leadership development and the traits and characteristics of pastors who work together. So whenever you say collaboration and team, you have me, So what were some of your main discoveries in leadership in your study across all these different sectors in society?
Dan, if you want, I can kind of take this one off.
You go ahead.
So the one that we heard as a very consistent thing throughout all of our interviews was really defining core values and making sure that the leadership is driving back to those core values to get people on board. I thought it was really interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, we had a very diverse group of interviewees for this. And every single person brought it back to those core values. Something that people could rally around. The second that was one of our big takeaways, and this was a quote from an interview in our in-person session, was "You are the weather." So how you present yourself as a leader helps drive the weather, helps drive that environment of what you're communicating, and how you communicate is at times just as important or more important than the message that you're having. And part of that is listening and responding as well.
Could you I'd love to hear more on core values. And then you said rudder, right? RUDDER, kind of weather. I heard weather. Wrong. Okay. Technology. Anyway, the weather. So go back to core values just for a second. Were there any core values that were like majorly different? Just give us a splattering of some of those core values, if you can remember them off the top of your head, because I obviously know ours, but I'd love to hear, like in the military, what some of those core values could be. Yeah. Do you remember, Rachael or Dan?
Well, I remember in the basketball, it was just the work ethic, the teamwork, I'm forgetting the one, but he had one that was about being there, like being all in when you're there, things of that nature. All had to do with kind of hard work and discipline and being there for your teammates. And it seemed kind of similar from what we heard about the military. Is like being sacrificial to your team, going after your cause, that kind of thing. So I didn't see that was all that different from what yours would be, Tim. At what you said about core values of your leadership team and Christ Greenfield. So they seem similar actually in that way, other than obviously yours are driven by God. And theirs are driven by the will to win, or either win a war or win a competition, right?
Which I think is all first article natural law oriented, that we get the most out of life when we realize life is not about ourselves. Life is about a higher cause. Life is about God's cause, or it's about the cause of the team. And then we are hardwired for community. From the very beginning, this is not good that man should be alone. So how do we find ourselves and orient our unique giftings in this wider web of love and care and support, all with that shared vision, that shared mission? It could be for us multiplying disciples. And I'd love to hear, a lot of times businesses, you may get the bad rap of it's all about market share, money. But I think a lot of the best businesses have even a higher cause why that drives, right? Anything more to add about that kind of bigger why, Rachael?
Yeah, well, we have a couple core principles at Siemens, and my favorite one is impact. Because every single day, what brings me to work and what makes me excited about what I do is the impact that we have with our technologies. It could be direct impact on just making sure a building is running, but I love the impact we have on healing in the healthcare environment, the impact we have on making sure that pharmaceuticals are manufactured in a safe way, or K through 12 school children are comfortable, but also the impact we have within our team. And so that is one of the main things I talk about in my leadership team meetings is drilling back down, not just to profit and the impact that has, but what's the real visceral impact that we have?
Well, and I think if you look at Siemens, so it's an interesting fun fact. Siemens and LCMS, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, have something in common. They were both started about 175 years ago and born out of Germany in a different way, right? So Werner von Siemens was our founder back 175 years ago. And he had a mission statement, which we still use today, which is to provide technologies that improve quality of life and create lasting value in society. So it is bigger, for him and for us, than the money. We got to make money to stay in business, and you got to not lose money to stay in business. But yeah, that if you see, like even today, so back then it was a different thing that he was working on. But you see today we focus a lot on like sustainability and making, life better for the world and that kind of a thing. And so it is good to have that sort of bigger thing that you're after, something bigger than yourselves.
Amen. That bigger why. You also found out that top talent often doesn't fit into culture. And I totally agree with this. It's about maintaining the Jesus-centered, the other-centered culture that we have fostered here. And you can have a top performer or someone who's remarkably gifted, just not fit. Anything more to add to that, Rachael?
It's been the hardest lesson, I would say, that I've had to learn because, it's almost sometimes a disservice to somebody to promote them if it's not the right fit. We unfortunately have lived that in my branch, and it was very hard to make that determination and then act upon it. And so I think, my interview style has changed. My people development style has changed as a result of that, because you've got to share those core values. You've got to know that it's the right fit. And I think, you see that in the church too often, is you want to make sure that you've got that right connection before a relationship evolves.
Mm-hmm. How did you assess that early on? Because hiring, we got 130 people on our team, and there's always 2 or 3 maybe hires that are taking place in any given respective season. What were some of those mechanisms that you used connected to your core values to try the best you possibly could to assure a good fit, right?
I think number one is growth mindset. Just making sure that if somebody's joining the team, that they understand that traits are not fixed, that a person can grow and can evolve. As long as we have that base understanding, I think we can coach and work through pretty much anything else.
Man, I agree that you're talking character right now. It's about others, and it's about I'm never satisfied. I never arrive. That takes a unique type of person. Anything more to say toward that growth mindset, Dan?
No, other than it takes curiosity. So you're looking for somebody that's curious and that has a growth mindset, and just sort of like a team. They're not, some people you can sense that they're just out there for themselves and not for the team. And so there's that. But yeah.
You also, Dan, learn Yeah, amen. You also learn, and we're such strong advocates of this, coaching and empowerment. Get team members to define their personal goals, and this drives accountability and alignment. That is so huge in the spiritual realm as well as in the marketplace. So anything more there, Rachael, around coaching and empowerment?
Just that, it's not an inherent skill to be able to do that. That was one of the things that Dan and I worked on as part of this program, was to be better coaches and learn to help others kind of define what that path needs to look like themselves.
Could you tell me, because I'm a certified coach with the secular organization, so tell me like your core principles for coaching a team member really, really well, Rachael or Dan, I don't care. Yeah.
Well, not to jump in with solutions. It's really easy, especially when you feel like you might be a subject matter expert in something or have an answer or a direction in mind already. You've got to sit back, you've got to actively listen, and you have to ask open-ended questions to help people figure out their own path and then support them in that.
That's so good, Rachael. That's so, because we want to come in and we're fixers. A lot of us who are leaders, we're like, I know how it should be. But you don't exactly know what's going on in their head and heart, what's going on in their respective context. So how do you lead with just great humility, open-ended questions? I like to think of like a funnel. What do you want to talk about today? What's top of mind today? What's giving you the most joy today? Lead with a lot of those types of questions, and then narrow down for them. Self-discovery is the best discovery, right? For them to say, and I'm committing to this thing, probably no more than 3 things, right, over the next week or month. And I'd love for you to just talk to me about that. That's it. But how often in various sectors, I just don't think that takes place with leaders on team. We dictate, we mandate, rather than lovingly invite our folks in. And man, when a team member sees you treating them with that kind of dignity and respect, they will run fast and far, man. They care about it because they're invested. They're not being told what to do. They get that sense of autonomy and control, the right amount of control to shape the future for themselves and for the team. It's very powerful. Anything else to add there, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, if it comes out of their mind and mouth, they're going to own it. Yeah, and that's what ultimately, whatever the decision is, they need to own it if they want to make it successful. I know you love acrostics. The one we looked at in the class was called GROW, GROW. I'll give you the details on that some other time, unless you want me to give them to you now. But
it was an acronym to help. Yeah,
acrostic. But
so good, yeah. So good. So here's what I'd love to close with, and I want to start with you, Rachel, before we get to Dan. You've not been as probably intimately connected with the inner workings of different churches. I know you've been a church member, you come and you grow and you want your kids to know who Jesus is, but just top of mind for you in the marketplace, teach me up, coach me up. And I don't care if you tell me things right now. I'd love for you, from your perspective, to say what the local church has to learn from marketplace leaders and organizations. And then Dan, you'll close us down. Rachel.
Well, I think that it's really about that connection, and going back to some of our learnings or those core values, making sure that they're known, they're talked about, evangelizing to an extent. It's the same in business as it is within the church. It's bringing people in to want to be part of something bigger, to be part of the mission that you've developed. And I think that spans both.
So for me, my mind is going, we use this language here from consumer to contributor. And the major push, and the marketplace is different here because the church, many nonprofits, but the church in particular, most people come in with a consumer mindset, right? Pastor, you're going to do this for me, preach this sermon, make me feel good or challenge or whatever, and send me out and this kind of thing. And then I'll come back again to consume next Sunday. But the biggest switch happens for us in the congregation when people move from, they're on our team, right? So our staff, we get to lead teams of teams in many respects. If we're healthy and functional, from small groups out in the community and creating those spaces for Jesus conversations that happen, that they go from consumer to contributor or partner with us. And that is a huge, it can be a struggle for many pastors who have been trained to be doers rather than developers of other people, and then trying to fit your life and the way you do things with people who, like both of you, who are in the marketplace. You're busting it 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then how does Jesus meet you there in the marketplace? Yeah, that's the lens, the filter that needs to change, I think, for many of our everyday or every Sunday pew sitters, is Jesus is there with you. How does he give you wisdom? And how does the church then add value for speaking the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, as you lead in your marketplace? You get to be the hands and feet of Jesus, whether you say his name or not, and how you treat your partners, your teammates, as well as your consumers with dignity and love and respect. So that's the big switch for us. And that does make it a little bit more challenging for the everyday pastor, because your differentiation between a team member, a contributor, is very different. You know your consumers and contributors. Our goal is to switch them from consumer to contributor. Does that make sense, Rachel? The difference? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's something that I'm currently living with my church too, is when that outreach is made and I'm being asked to contribute, I do feel a lot more involved, and it's more fun, and it's a greater sense of purpose.
Yeah. So good. So good. So Dan, what else do we have to learn in local church?
So I would build on that to say, turn those contributors into leaders, because if you're looking at how do we build up Siemens, how do you build up a company and so on, is you got to have people that are taking leadership, whether it's a people leadership or it's leader of a project or whatever. So build up those leaders, make sure they know the core values, empower them to do what they, give them the tools and sort of the guidelines to do what they need to do. So I would take that step further. And then I would say one other thing, if you look at what's kept Siemens around for 175 years and what keeps good companies around, is they're continuously adapting to what's changing, what's the change in the needs, the requests, what's changing in the methods, and so on. And they're always experimenting with applying, those new methods to the new needs, but yet keeping the same core value. As I mentioned, we still have the same core values we did 175 years ago. But 175 years ago, we offered telegraphs and lights for streets, right? And today we're doing windmills and spaceships and that kind of thing. But we're still for the same purpose. So I think you got to be able to adapt, to that. Things are always changing.
Oh, man, powerful. The church has figured out how to adapt beautifully. Not. We struggle with this. We struggle with this. And, because the why, the mission of God, always remains the same. And the what, declaring who God is, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and who Jesus is in particular, and how he came to love the world through his life, death, and resurrection. So gospel proclamation, that what doesn't change, but the how, it must change. It's not a negotiable. And right now, if there are church bodies, churches in particular, who are not adjusting the how while keeping, and this is the main struggle for us, Rachel, it's doctrine and then practice. So how does the church live out its life, its respective callings, its various vocations in the world? And man, we really, really struggle, because there's this interplay or this interaction between doing and developing, between the what, or theology, which is the what, and then the how, which is practice. And the crazy thing about the message of Jesus is that it has crossed every single culture and all these different practices, with the main thing, the message of the life, death, resurrection of Jesus, crossing all of those cultures. And yet the practices are remarkably different. And in a cross-cultural America right now, where it's becoming ever increasingly maybe more Eastern, more Southern, less maybe Western, the church has to look at the how and respect the unique cultural practices while maintaining the clarity around the gospel of Jesus Christ. Anything more to add there, Dan? Because we're walking through it. You and I are part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We're walking through this in real time right now, and praying that the how around maybe leadership development could be analyzed more specifically. Anything more, Dan?
No, I mean, you hit it. That's definitely the application there is to the LCMS and to the church as a whole. Is we gotta adapt. It's very difficult for especially a more conservative church body like LCMS to adapt, because they're trying to protect whatever we've got going on. But Siemens too. Siemens is a very conservative company, but manages to adapt in a experimental way. So you got to maybe experiment with things, try them out, and learn from them. The lean startup principles, those are always, I know you're aware of those are always a good way to do it.
Amen. Last question, Rachel. Maybe I said that already. Here it is. If there's one prayer that you have for just any healthy leader, what would you pray for them?
To be able to slow down and not let the pressures take away from the tools they have to be a good leader. I think personally that's what I struggle with the most, is the everyday pressures, and the cadence takes you away from the things that you know are the right things to do. So I just hope every leader can pause.
Yes, the power of the pause, for sure, specifically so that we can connect with our people, right? Deeply connect with our team members. Anything more to add? What's your prayer, Dan?
I just, pray that they have courage. You know, a lot of times to do the right thing takes courage. It's not always the easy thing to do. And so I pray for courage for myself and for anybody else out there.
Yeah, amen. And I think courage comes out of the pause. Courage comes in that deeper connection. I'm not alone. I can take risks. Everything's not gonna fall apart. I'm supported, I'm loved, and I'm connected to this bigger why, this big mission. This has been so much fun today, Rachael, Dan. It's an honor and it's such a joy to use technology and to learn with you both today. If you'd like to connect with Rachael, you can do so at Rachael, that's with an A, RACHAEL.Larson. Larson at Siemens, SIEMENS. What amazing company, Siemens.com. And then it's Dan Heyn, DAN.HEYN at Siemens.com. This is the American Reformation podcast, loving having conversations with amazing leaders like Rachael and Dan, who are doing amazing work within the local congregation and I shouldn't say better yet, and in addition, out in the marketplace. I think there's a lot for the marketplace to learn from the church and the church to learn from the marketplace, and I pray that's what you've experienced today. This is American Reformation. Sharing is caring. Please like, subscribe, comment wherever it is you take in podcasts, and we promise to continue to have encouraging leadership-centered conversations centered in the person and work of Jesus week in and week out. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much, Rachael. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.